what is the source and the higher self which you are talking about?
Yeah, so I see source as that divine intelligence that we talked about, the creator that's running through all of us. And I think that a lot of times, especially through traditional religion, we see that as something outside of us. We see it as a being, like maybe a human form. I don't see it that way anymore. I see it more as like a light and intelligence, but it can help us to have that kind of human, kind of anthropological, like, let me feel like I'm relating to a loving being, then that creates that separation. So, again, I believe that that source is just the divinity that flows through everything. And we can align ourselves more and more with it by being intentional and
Kara, first of all, welcome to Zest to Live. I'm so excited to have you today on the show, and we're going to have a really fun conversation today. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing really great. I think, we're going to discuss about so many topics today. But, when I was reading your bio, I read that, you were in the corporate world for a long time, which is like 15 years or something, which is a long time. And from there, which is really like that ambitious space, from there to turning into spirituality is unheard of, you know unless, okay, you made a lot of money, then you think, okay, now there's nothing I can make here, let's go spiritual. That's the whole deal. But what was the your case when you thought, okay, this turnaround happened? What was that aha moment for you, that, okay, the universe has put that hammer on your head? So tell us about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people who come to spirituality for a similar reason that I did, and that is, personal tragedy kind of hitting the bottom of reality and needing to feel something different. And so I had just a series of tragedies that happened really closely together. So my sister-in-law passed away, and 3 weeks later our dog died, and a few weeks after that my stepdad had to have a he was having spinal stenosis, and they had to have a surgery on his brain stem, kind of spinal cord area, which is a very delicate and serious
Right.
surgery. And my stepmom was hit by a bus was hit by a motorbike while she was crossing the street. And so she was in the hospital for a long time. And then my stepmother had heart failure and was in the intensive care unit and had a heart transplant. So all of that happened within a very short time. And it really, that's just what happened with the people closest, in my like immediate family. And at that time, I was with my husband and two kids living abroad. So I couldn't be with my family very easily while all this was happening. So it was sort of like my world just felt like it was falling apart. It was like,
Collapsed. Collapsed.
exactly. And at that time, I was not in the corporate world anymore. So when we moved abroad, I had stopped working, but just kind of, I thought, temporarily while we were having that part of our lives. And but when I was kind of when I undertook that transformation, just really for me, it was about learning meditation at the time. That was really all I wanted. That was all I needed, was just to get that sense of calm. But it over time became very much a spiritual practice. It became a way to connect with God and to feel God within me, to feel the divinity within me. And the more that I got out of meditation, the more I could feel it transforming me, then I really had a deep desire to bring it to other people and to help other people learn, particularly because I had had that background of modern living and being stuck in kind of that corporate machine, and having two children and a husband, and just being in the modern world in a fast-paced life. And I had gotten such from it that it was like, okay, if I can do this, other people can do it. And there's so much magic here, there's so much medicine here. And so that was really kind of how my journey kicked off with meditation.
So, I'll get into the meditation part, but, my question just regarding that, what you said, what are we chasing? I mean, I mean, after when you go into spirituality, I'm not talking about that, but what are most people chasing when they are in the corporate world, when they are in the, again, money is one thing, I understand that. Okay, that's the part of it. But that's just a part of it. Even I've seen some people who have a lot of money still chasing more. So
Hmm.
what is that ambition to reach? Where are they trying to reach? So as I said, that my question is, what are we chasing there, and what are we doing in the spiritual world? What is the difference in terms of that ambition?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great philosophical question, right? And I would love to know too what you think because it's different for different people. What I see, what I observe, and I think a lot of the underlying chasing that you're talking about is many things: security, a sense of insecurity. You know, if it's like you say, if it's like we have enough, we have what we need, but so why do we keep chasing? Is it because we feel we're worried that we're going to lose what we have? So we feel, and then there's a lot of programming in there too from society, from our culture. So, you know, being in America, being in the Western world, it's reinforced all because everybody's behaving that way. Our TV shows are
The
reinforcing
American
it. Then,
dream.
yeah, the news is reinforcing it. Everything is under, you know, we're getting these subtle psychological um, implants all the time. I don't want to say the word implant, but I can't think of a better word. But where it's like, you know, be be secure, you need money, you need these things are going to help you be comfortable, they're going to help you be happy. And there's the power piece as well. You know, I think that's a subconscious driver for many people, not everybody, but I think a lot of people equate money with power. They equate the position at their job with power. They feel that
Freedom. Freedom.
freedom, a misplaced sense of freedom, because really we're shackled to the monetary system, we're shackled to status when we have that mindset. So we're mistakenly we desire freedom, but we're looking at it in the wrong place because it's not actually freedom. It's again shackles to,
Bondage. Bondage.
yes, exactly. So what do you think? What do you think is behind it all?
Well, I think there is definitely security. I
Mhm.
agree to that point because I think there is a lot of security. The second thing which I believe or I think is what I have seen in people is fear.
Mhm.
Because again, a lot of this is driving you that okay, you have to be something. From the very childhood, you have been told by your parents, by your friends, okay, you have to become something. Look at your friend, look at that guy, look. You have been told like that. If you don't become that, you are finished. You have no place in the society. So if you
Mhm.
want to have a place, you have to chase. And I think inherently there is that fear of being left out. And all
Mhm.
our fears come down to one fear, that is being left out alone.
Mhm.
That's the principal fear of all the fears, the king of all fears is being left out alone. We don't want to be alone, and that's how spirituality starts. Being alone with yourself has been so hard. We always, even if we are alone, we start singing in our mind. Okay, we have to sing, we have to talk to ourselves, so somehow we can keep ourselves occupied. And that's
Mhm.
the very deep purpose of meditation, to remove those things you know and another thing that I would like to ask, and I have never asked this to a guest because nobody has come with that kind of a thing. Your bio mentions ascensions, so consciousness expansion.
Mhm.
Your bio mentions that. What is exactly that? I mean, I think a lot of people do know about it, but I think I would like to hear more about it in from your mouth, like what it is and how did you discover it when you started meditating and all of that. So I would like to know about that.
So ascension, is that what the topic? Okay. Um, so it's really this, like you say, it's an expansion. It's an expansion of consciousness. And so what does that mean? Our consciousness is really the awareness that we are. So not the awareness that we are, not that we're not necessarily just that we're aware that we have a body, that we have emotions, that we have thoughts, that's part of it, but it's the awareness that those things are. And so it's this eternal, what it's the eternal nature of who we are. So rather than those temporary things of the body, the mind, the emotions, all of those change constantly, and they're not there before we're born, and they're gone when we die, but there's an eternal part of us that's within us, around us, beyond us, that we truly are. That's the real truth of who we are. And so ascension is this expansion of that awareness, because if we're really attached to our human experience and we don't understand that there's more than that, then our awareness doesn't get beyond our body, it doesn't get beyond our emotions, it doesn't get beyond our thoughts. That's kind of our world. And we can't understand anything beyond it, our relationship to the world, how other people make us feel, how the world makes us feel, and so on. But as we continue to expand our consciousness, it's this developing and maturing awareness of the reality of who we are and what's happening. So we're able to have new perspectives about things. We can see connections to things that we maybe couldn't see before. So one example of this is something called synchronicity that people start to notice as they advance their consciousness, where it's like, oh, this thing that somebody's talking about is related so closely to a conversation I was just having yesterday. And it's like, well, we could think of those things as coincidences. But when we start to see these repeating patterns, I mean, synchronicity is recognizing patterns all around you and that they're reflecting each other, right? So maybe there's a song that comes on the radio that is like it's talking to you because it's so relevant, and you're hearing the song in a new way and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like this song is talking to me. Have you ever had that experience?
I did have a lot of those experience.
Yes. Um,
But why do you think these happen? I know you just said that, when it happens when we expand,
mhm.
but why? I mean, does this mean that we are in a simulation? Again, that question comes back because it is the paradoxical. Does that mean everything is predestined, or what is going on? Why there's so many synchronicities? That's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a very philosophical question, and there are a lot of different thoughts about it. And, are we in a simulation? Maybe we can look at this reality as a simulation because, I was just reflecting recently about a conversation that I was having, or I think it was like a Facebook. I was like one of my acquaintances on Facebook years ago. You could tell by her posts that she was entertaining the idea that we are in a video simulation, but she'd made it very clear that she was atheist. So she really didn't believe in God, but she was really starting to come around to the idea that we're all ones and zeros and somebody's programming what's happening. And I'm like, what's the difference? Really? I mean, God, being that there is some like intelligent design to what's happening versus thinking that somebody is creating a video simulation and that's what we're in. That's the same idea. We're just using different language to explain it, but there is like a creator, that a higher power, and we're a part of it. And it's really more of a philosophical, like what feels better to the person who's considering, are we in a simulation? Is there God? Is there nothing? Is there, I mean, even believing that there's nothing, you believe something, So it's I mean, I don't know for sure, like, what is the grand design, what is the, but I mean, I have seen enough in my own visuals, in my own journeys, through my inner sight, to see patterns and to see, I mean, literally to see patterns and designs, and um like see moving energy that is in different patterns, that is like, wow, there is a creation here and there are levels to this
It is
creation.
ongoing, and it is ongoing.
It's ongoing,
So,
it's eternal.
so some people think that it is finished, but it is not finished. Science does
No.
not agree to it, and truly, the great spiritualists who have been born also say that it is ongoing because it can
Hmm.
never end. It
Right.
has never started. Because
Hmm.
some people say, okay, this is, okay, God created the world in this time or this time, but the moment you say He created, means He comes within the frame of time. You have to understand that the moment you say that that person or that entity created the world means that he has come under the law of time. But if he is beyond time, then how can there be any creation? Because he has to come from no time, and no time there is nothing like that. So you have to
Yeah, but you have
understand
to
that.
lift it higher because it's
Right.
like not that a creator comes into time, because that assumes there's a creator beyond that that has established the laws
Again,
of time.
the same thing. That's the
Yeah.
same thing, and that's what I'm saying, that it has to be, so that has to precede time. It cannot come within the law of time. So you
Well,
cannot
and
say
I
that creation happened.
and I don't see it as a separate being that's doing the
Right.
creating. It's
Right.
like we are part of this creation. It's an intelligence. I mean, I
Like a
see it
light.
more of
Like a light.
like a
Like a
light,
light.
like a light, like an intelligence that is a cosmic.
Operating, destroying, creating,
Yes, and
managing.
it's not, and it's, and we're part of that creation as well. You know, that's within us, it's through us, it's it's part of everything. You know, you can't separate
Right.
anything from it. You can't even separate plastic from it because it is running through the whole design, the whole creation.
But it needs a lot great intellect to grasp that understanding, unless for a person who has not really expanded might not like the sound of it, and that is true. That is
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
But let's talk about meditation. That's what I was originally going to ask you. How has meditation changed your life? And I'm sure you never meditated before, like that time, okay, you started the journey. How did meditation slowly, I mean, you must have faced some initial challenges like all the people do. Then
Mhm.
how did you overcome them, and how did meditation change your life? Tell us about that.
So I had tried meditation before. I'd always been kind of drawn to meditation because I'd read something that would make me think, "Ooh, this is like some kind of magic practice. I want to try that." And then, but I never really formally figured out how to do it. I just thought, "Oh, I'll sit here and I'll be quiet." And that's when the magic comes in. And this was when I was living a very, very busy life, corporate life, two little kids. And my mind would just race, and just like what you're talking about, and I really didn't get anything out of it, and I didn't know how to get beyond those challenges, so I wouldn't keep up with the practice. I wouldn't prioritize it. When I really felt that I really needed it, um, then I got a teacher. That was a very important part for me. So I really dedicated myself to actually learning a proper practice of meditation, and I learned methods. So I wasn't just sitting there trying to expecting my mind to slow down and to get into a meditative state just because I that's what I wanted. You know, I realized, I learned that there were step-by-step methods that could help me get into that state. And so I utilized what I learned, and that was really helpful. But I still had those challenges of like, oh my gosh, my mind is racing. And so it was, I mean, one of the biggest ways to handle that is understanding that that's part of the process. What I tell my students is, if you sit down to try to meditate and your mind is just pinging around like a pinball machine, um, it doesn't mean you're a bad meditator. It means you're a meditator, because that's what meditation is for so many people. It's giving us that chance to understand that there is so much mental activity, and we have to notice that, and then we work with it. And so it's not something, a lot of people just stop at the like, oh, I'm bad at this because my mind won't stop, rather than, oh, this is my natural state. That's interesting. I don't normally notice how busy my thoughts are. And I can do something with that. And I can even use that as part of my meditation practice, where I keep noticing those thoughts and then bringing my awareness back, and keep letting that be part of my practice to get me stronger and stronger. Similar to if you go to the gym and you want to get stronger, you add resistance, right? You add weight, you add challenge, and that's how you sculpt your physical body. It's the same thing with meditation. It's like, yes, notice that your thoughts are starting to wander away. But don't just let them do that. Notice it and then go, oh, here's my chance to work out in my
You should not
in my
get
consciousness and
affected.
come back.
You should not just get affected. I mean, okay, it's
Hmm.
like the moment you realize that the thoughts are not really thoughts. It's like a river that is flowing, and you just
Hmm.
have to sit on the shore. You don't have to be swimming in that river, which you are doing right now. Only if you sit, then it let it flow, and slowly it will flow, and after a while it will become still. That very moment meditation happens, when it becomes still, there is not even a line of a thought. And again, I say this to a lot of people, that sometimes when you have the first experience of deep meditation, it can be scary, it can make you afraid because it is dark. It does take you there for a moment, and you feel that because you've never felt such a life. After a while you could really see this is your natural state. That might take time, so that's why I said, so for some people it can be a little bit scary experience. It can be a little bit afraid, like this, it is dark, and that is how it is. Because but once you go more deeper, you will see the light. And again, you have to be ready for it, because it cannot just happen when you want it to happen. That's the point. But yes, if you are ready, the existence is always ready. It does not have that clock kind of a thing. Okay, this time it will give, this time it will give. It is not automated like that. Whenever you are ready, it is ready to give. And that is that you have to understand. But one of your core focus is also connecting to what you said, the higher self, that to the source. What is the source and the higher self which you are talking about? I think a lot of our listeners would be interested to know about that as well.
Yeah, so I see source as that divine intelligence that we talked about, the creator that's running through all of us. And I think that a lot of times, especially through traditional religion, we see that as something outside of us. We see it as a being, like maybe a human form. I don't see it that way anymore. I see it more as like a light and intelligence, but it can help us to have that kind of human, kind of anthropological, like, let me feel like I'm relating to a loving being. But then that creates that separation. So, again, I believe that that source is just the divinity that flows through everything. And we can align ourselves more and more with it by being intentional and asking, intending that we are filled with divine light, that we are aligned with the divine light. Because even though everything is source, not everything in creation is aligned with the highest light. So kind of you talk about that darkness there, you can take
The
that as a metaphor
frequencies.
as
The
well,
frequencies.
right? Lower frequencies, right? So and then the higher self is an aspect of source. So it's kind of a fractal. So if we imagine that like source is everything, source is, just to make things simplistic, like it's the zenith, it's the, what everything comes from, it encompasses everything. And then it's got all these fractals of itself, all of these expressions of itself. And the higher self would be one of those expressions. And so that is kind of another aspect of us, but it's a higher frequency. It encompasses more. It encompasses many lifetimes. It encompasses many aspects of ourselves. So if we can likewise think of that higher self, that it is a fractal of source. It is an expression of source. And then we as humans are a fractal or an expression of the higher self. So it's an eternal, it's the eternal aspect.
Unchanging. Unchanging.
Well, growing. I mean, I believe that it
Right.
is developing. It is dynamic. So part of what it is receiving from our expression of life is more experience, more understanding. It is growing and developing. Um, and then there are, different incarnations that we are, and we are one of those incarnations that of that higher self expression.
Who were those enlightened beings? We call them. Okay, you say, for some people they are gods in their respective religion. For other people, they were just the enlightened beings. And I could name a few. I could name Jesus, I could name the great Buddha, I could name many people. But again, I just took the two names because they are very famous in the West. Okay. Jesus is considered in Christianity that, and in Buddhism is considered very big, not God, but in Christianity, Jesus is considered the Son of God.
Mhm.
So and so and in some traditions of Christianity, Jesus is considered God himself as well. In some traditions in Christianity, so again, who were those people who have come to the earth and given their message? What they understood or what they experienced? What do you think about them?
Well, I think that they've achieved a level of understanding and consciousness expansion that is achievable for humans. It is, well, they were humans, they were human beings. Jesus, it is in the Bible that Jesus said, all of these things that I do, you will do and more. And so I think that in one aspect, they were they were this embodiment of divinity in its highest form, in human form, like our greatest potential. And they're way showers, they're beings who came kind of in advance to show us through example of the possibilities. So I think that we do ourselves a disservice when we see them as gods, or we see them as other, like, oh, they can do this because they're gods, and so let's
Right,
worship
right,
them.
right.
Whereas the whole point of their, I believe, the whole point of their incarnation was, of course, to experience enlightenment, but really they were these huge souls who came here to say, hey guys, you have so much more
Potential.
at,
and
yes, you've
and
got
and
it
no,
in
I said,
you.
and I said the, what you just said, I said the same thing a few episodes back in
Mhm.
one of my podcasts, that okay, that if we look at them as gods, we are kind of disrespecting them. And I said the same thing, because again,
Mhm.
then we look at them that only this is possible because they are gods. But
Mhm.
actually, the moment you look at them, that these were the people who achieved the peak of evolution, the peak of that consciousness expansion, then you can see, okay, this is the potential that I can also achieve. When you look at Bruce Lee, for example, or Muhammad Ali, the great boxer and the great martial artist,
Martial
look at their
artist.
what they achieved.
Mhm.
So why could they achieve such with just one body that we also have? This just
Mhm.
shows that how much potential capabilities that we have within ourselves. And I have said this in this one of my episodes, that all the treasures are not external, it's here. All the Kohinoor diamonds, all the great gold bars, you look outside, you think, okay, but all of those can fail away with if you find one diamond within you, because that can change the whole experience.
I
Now my
love
next
that.
question
Yeah.
now my next question is very significant, and I think it's going to be a bit tough one too, I feel, but I'm going to throw
Okay.
that at you.
All right,
Tell
let's
us,
do it.
tell me about your awakening. Tell me about that first moment that it happened. And I know it's hard to describe those things, but I would still love you to give us that brief. I think a lot of people want to know that, especially me as well. I love to hear those things when people describe their experience the way they can describe it.
Yeah, well, I would say that there are a lot of different levels to that. So there are a lot of different ways that I could
Right.
answer that, because I don't feel that there was one awakening moment. I mean, the kind of first moment that I
Hmm.
would that came to mind actually when you said that was simply, it was early on in my meditation journey, and it was simply experiencing that light that you talked about earlier. So you were saying we sit in meditation and we might be uncomfortable as we realize the darkness that's in there, and then comes the light at some point. And I remember this showering of light coming down, and I could see it behind my closed eyes, and I was weeping. It felt so divine, so beautiful. And looking back, that was a very simple experience in terms of, I mean, there's such kind of like innocence in that looking back, but it was so profound. And it was simply experiencing light, but feeling and understanding that there was a connection with this light. There was something bigger with that light. There was this, it was a connection, like a spiritual connection. Um, but since then, I've had many mystical kind of journeys. I have a hard time, like you were saying, it's kind of hard to explain them, even to like label them, because it's like, well, they're mystical journeys, they have shamanic elements, but I'm not doing like a shamanic ritual to invoke them. But they, I recognize from learning other shamans experiences, I'm like, yeah, I know those realms, I know that. But it is this, whether, and I just experienced one last night actually, before I fell asleep, that went on for probably an hour and a half before I fell asleep. But eyes open or closed, it doesn't matter, but seeing in my mind's eye, these realms, seeing. So if you close your eyes at any point, anybody listening to this can close their eyes, and you may notice like static. Like, I think of it as visual static, where you close your eyes and there are all these like little, it just looks like if you're
Sprinkles of, like,
sprinkles. Yeah, like for me, when I was growing up, sometimes the TV you'd lose the TV reception and you'd see the we would call it static.
yeah,
um,
right.
you don't see it so much anymore, but
Right, right.
with modern technology. But that's kind of what it can look like behind our closed eyes. And the way it's like that starts to organize, and you can see all these patterns. It's like you start to see patterns, almost like you're in a room that doesn't have corners, and there are just patterns that are moving, and they're very kind of like psychedelic. If you see psychedelic renditions on TV shows, The Simpsons,
Right,
sometimes like they lick a
right.
frog and then so but it's like that sort of. But a lot of times I can hear things. So last night, part of it was I could hear this. It sounded like an African language. It sounded like a woman saying. So I could hear somebody in my inner ear. I knew it wasn't outside of me, but I could hear this language, and it sounded like a type of African language. And I could hear a kind of a music, like a drum beat. And I'm seeing these shapes, but it's these realms. It's all around
and
you, and it's moving, and
and as you go deeper and deeper and you become consistent with your practice, because consistency is very important in meditation,
hmm
then you can start to hear. Not for everybody, again, I'm saying this because everybody
hmm
has individual experiences for them, but you see the patterns. Okay, some people have that pattern, so you might hear the music, you
hmm
might hear, because again, that is just the part of what the current existence is. The existence is always in ecstasy.
hmm
It is not like, okay, we are. Look, I remember, the Buddha said the great thing: sorrow is going to continue. You might think,
hmm
okay, it might, because one of the disciples of Buddha asked that you told us that, if we meditate, if we become like what you have, become, we will leave sorrow. There will be no sorrow, there will be no pain. But you are getting older, you are getting sick, I am getting older, nothing is happening. A great question he asked. Buddha said that you have chosen sorrow. The sorrow is going to continue. You are going to die. Sickness is going to happen. Things are going to come and go. But are you going to let that affect you? Or are you going to choose? Because you have the choice. And that was significant because he said that you have a choice to choose. And I did not understand it when I read that back then. I was very young. I thought, okay, how can we choose if something is going to happen to me? The choose is to let it affect you or not affect you. The moment you do not let it affect you, you transcend it, you surpass it. So then the pain cannot touch you, because again, everything can touch here but nothing can touch that. As you know, nothing can touch that, everything is out. This,
hmm
nothing can touch that, nothing can come close to it, because all has come from it. And as you said, it's a beautiful experience. So the moment you have experience, there is no place for beliefs. All the
yeah.
books, all the scriptures fall away, because you have the experience now. You don't need words to understand or believe anything, because you need to have experience. That's why I insist a lot on experience, because on words you cannot rely. Those
hmm
are the experience for of other people. But my next question is also a bit funny, in the sense that you host a podcast called The Meditation Conversation,
Hmm.
and we have been talking about meditation. And a lot of our listeners who are beginners in meditation, who are trying to get into meditation, what are some advices would you like to give when they are starting out meditation? How to be that consistent, how to take it deep? Would you like to suggest some methods perhaps? And tell us a little bit about your podcast as well as we are wrapping this up.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I mean, you said it so beautifully in terms of the the patience, the understanding, the consistency, you know. So there's so many elements. There's so many elements. I mean, one of the things is that a lot of times we think that meditation, you know, oh, like the way that I approach meditation, I've got to learn meditation. Show me how to meditate, which there is value in that. And as we sort of expand our consciousness, we understand that there are a lot of ways to do that. And so it's, I highly, highly, highly recommend developing a daily practice so we get that consistency and learning methods that can help because again it's really really almost I would say it's almost impossible to just sit down with no guidance and try to meditate. Guided meditations can be a great way to begin having a practice because then you're not having to put a lot of mental energy into what do I do? What do I, how long do I breathe? What do I do after I breathe? You know, and all of these things. And I have a lot of, you can dig through my podcast. I've got some guided meditations sprinkled in there and on my website, karagoodwin.com. You can sign up to get a
I'll
free
drop that in the description.
yeah, thank you. There's a free meditation on there on the homepage. But so those can be some easy ways to start to develop a practice and then kind of hold your meditation practice lightly in the sense of not getting so attached to what you learn that you think that that's the only way or you are like so stuck in it that you don't want to explore anything else. And this can be a trap that we get ourselves into or that like a lineage that we get involved in might like trap us in that way to be like this is I've been in a part of
This is
this.
the way. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
the
where
way,
it's
like,
like
oh, you have
this.
to be.
Right. I have had to break out of
Oh,
organizations that have done that where it's like, oh, this is really, yeah, I
good
really
work.
like this. Yeah, this is a great practice. And then they're like, this is the only practice. This is the fastest way. Don't look anywhere else. Stop looking outside. You know, and it's like, wait a minute, there's so much stuff out here. There's so much, you know, somatic where you're using the movement of the body. That's so helpful. And tons of breath work that people are teaching that are so, they can really help to blast you through so it's kind of like get that foundation, get some things that help you get that consistency because again, there's no substitute for consistency. There's also really no substitute for a daily meditation practice. A lot of times people have the misunderstanding that that can be something that you do in the beginning. Oh, so that I can learn how to be more spiritual or more connected or calmer or whatever. I'll start with meditation and then I'll graduate out of meditation. But really, meditation is a foundational practice
Very
that
big
is
school, very big school, many
very big
classrooms.
school. Yes, yes. And so foundational, not meaning foundational in terms of beginner, but foundational meaning it's the foundation. It's
The
the
base, the
base.
base.
And you got to, you can't let it go. Even if you want to evolve your practice again, like
Because
highly encourage that. But
everywhere you go, if it's even prayer, it is meditation in it nature. It is, the
yeah.
moment you become silent, it is meditation in place. There is nothing else which can you can say this is not yoga. Even in yoga,
Hmm.
what is happening? Meditation is happening. Even in yoga,
Hmm.
meditation is happening.
Right.
So again, what you said, I'd like to add a small thing to it.
Hmm.
Just suggestion from my side. I would not like to add too many or of give because I think people are smart. People can find their way. My suggestion is to you that a very big mistake has happened in humanity today is to take meditation as something serious, that it is serious. Don't take it seriously. Take it lightly. Take it as fun. Take it as a game. Don't take, and when I say that, I'm saying this is with absolute sincerity, but take it as a game. Don't become serious with it. Play with it. Have fun with it because the world needs playful meditators. The world is tired of meditators who are very depressed, who have all of those things. They want cheerful, laughing meditators. That's what the world is craving for. So be one of them and then see how far you can go. And again, I would like to continue and you wrap that podcast thing so I can have one last question and then we can stop
Sure.
it.
Sure. Oh, sorry. Talk about the podcast. I'm
The
sorry.
podcast.
Yes, the podcast is called The Meditation Conversation. And it actually began as a sort of more practical, like around meditation. It's evolved to very similar to your format, where we're really talking about consciousness
Hmm.
and the different aspects of consciousness. So we might be in one episode, it might be around energy healing. In another, it might be about ascension. It might be about the Akashic records. It might be about like quantum energy and how
Right.
people are using quantum technology. So I have a lot of experts who come on, and they because so many people, again, there are so many different modalities, sound
Right.
experts,
Right.
people are exploring different things. And so it's just bringing in different experts and talking about that. So you can, it's on all the platforms, Apple Podcasts and so forth, and on YouTube. But the easiest way to get to it is at themeditationconversation.com.
Great, you have a website for that. So
Yeah.
my last question, and I think I don't think you have been asked this question. I'm not sure, but again, I'm asking this question, and I have never asked such a question, but I thought I'll ask you: if you could have dinner or with a historical figure, be it a spiritual leader, spiritual guru, or a scientist, anybody, living or dead, does not matter. Who would that be, and why?
That's a great question. You know, Jesus comes to mind. I mean, that's such a pinnacle. Back to your comment from earlier, just about these, and I'm not like I would not call myself a Christian, but I have deep, deep respect and awe for Christ, even for Jesus Christ, even even as 100%, we were, as we were talking, it's not that I see him as a god, but I see that he, really activated the completeness of his human potential and accessed so many mysteries, within himself, that he was, he had things active within him that are also within us, that to be around him would be in the flesh, would be
Beautiful.
unbelievable. And then, over dinner, what could I learn? What could he transfer? I would have to
You
go,
have so many
have to go
questions.
with
I
Jesus.
believe you want to ask him. I know that
Oh
you
my
won't you
goodness.
don't want to reveal those things maybe on the podcast, but I know you have those going in your mind right now. But I think
Yes.
I would love to have you back on the show. Today we have a little bit of a time constraint, but again, we would love to have you back on the show. But as we wrap up, any last advice or guidance or any kind of a thing which you like to add to the listener, which you think, okay, you would like to end with it?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. One of it's, I think the human potential piece to it more than anything, just to really drive that home. We do get bombarded day after day, all throughout our life, that we're limited, and that, we can view, there's so much programming from our families, from society, from media, and it constricts us, and it changes the perception of reality, and it distorts reality to make us think that we are not powerful, and that we, that experiences like what I've mentioned, they're only reserved for some people and not for others. And the truth is that we have this technology, this human organic technology within us, that is dormant for most people. And if we do dedicate ourselves and devote ourselves to that spiritual connection, we open up so much. We open up so much potential for expansion.
Dimensions.
Yeah,
Dimensions.
dimensions. We are in a multidimensional experience, but we don't have access or view to it most of the time, most people. So, but it doesn't mean it's not there, and it doesn't mean it's not accessible, but it's prioritizing that spiritual connection so that we can experience a more complete version of our human experience.
And again, whenever you say that you are small, that you cannot have that experience, you cannot have, and the moment you have that experience, I would like to say to you, the moment you had your first experience in some sort of a, be it big or small, think about it wisely. How could it happen to you? Because it did not happen from something outside, that something came to you, something manifested in front of you. It happened here. So if it happened here, that means you already had the potential, you had the seed, it just blossomed. That's the thing.
I
You had
love it.
many seeds inside you. It just blossomed. And that's what I like to end with it. So moment you have experience, remember that you had the seeds, it blossoms, and it will blossom at the right time. So if it's not happening, don't think the existence is being cruel to me, God is being cruel to me. It is just not the time. When the time is right, things will happen. Do your meditation consistently and listen to this podcast. Maybe those things will help you, definitely, I believe. And so thank you so much, Kara, for being today on Zest to Live. I was really happy to have you today on the show, and I have something on my throat today, so I'm having a hard time to say some words which I'm trying to pronunciate. I'm
No, you're
pronouncing
doing
wrongly.
great.
But thank you so much today for the your time and giving all this guidance, experiences, and methods also a little bit to the listeners. I was really happy to today have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Well, it was such a joy. Thank you so much for inviting me. I've had a great time. I'd love to come back. Um, thank you so much. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing to help people to connect to these parts of themselves as well.